Let's get some analysis now. I'm joined by Saul Kavonic. He's Research Director with Credit Suisse, covering the oil and gas sector. Saul, thanks for your time. First of all, what are your fundamental concerns, if you can explain to our viewers what you're worried about in terms of this government intervention? How would you characterise that?
Look, there's three fundamental issues here. The first one is the way this intervention happened. Basically, we've got an intervention which amounts to a complete overhaul of the way the East Coast gas market works, and this has been sprung on the industry despite assurances from several ministers that there wouldn't be a long-term policy announced. And they've only been given out, this is being done with no consultation and only 3 days ahead of when they're looking to legislate it. And that's broken trust with the industry to the point where industry is now concerned, well, what else might the government throw at them with no notice and no consultation going forward? The second main issue is the result of when you put price fixing in place, which is essentially what this policy is, that can result in more demand in the medium term, but also less supply, as we're going to see now a strike on gas investment for new supply on the east coast of Australia. And lastly, and I think probably most acutely, is we are now seeing in the near term, this is before the next election, we're seeing Labor's essentially crossed the Rubicon here, where there's going to be so many unintended consequences from this intervention, they're going to have to inevitably intervene more. And this is going to place an undue burden on regulators such as the Australian Energy Market Operator, who are going to increasingly have to direct gas flows and energy flows in the East Coast market, which they do not have the capacity to do. And this could see things not line up, and we have a pile-up in the gas and energy sector leading to blackouts ahead of the next election, because this has all been rushed through without consultation, and no one's actually thought through the details of what this is going to mean when we have another near-miss situation, which we've had several over the last 2 years. The next near-miss, you'll see industries uncooperative, the regulator's not up to the task, and that's when the lights can go out.
When you say there's no consultation, the government says with this code of conduct, it is opening it up for consultation, that is fundamentally, that's what they're doing now with this reasonable price provision and so on, that is going to be subject to consultation before it's implemented. So on that front, aren't they doing what you've suggested in terms of opening it up for discourse? And the fact that the industry says it's surprised by it, they mustn't have been listening too carefully to the words of the Industry Minister, Ed Husic, in recent months, who's described their business model as resembling locust swarms, and he could not have been more strong in his warning to them, so they mustn't listen too well.
Well, of course, Minister Ed Husic has made those comments. We've seen similar strong comments from Dan Walton, the Australian Workers Union, who's been a key architect in pushing this policy forward. But industry's main point of contact in government is, of course, Resources Minister Madeleine King, who's proven to essentially almost have no influence in cabinet and now lost the trust of the industry as well. And industry engages with a number of ministerial counterparts, and that's where they were getting some reassurance from, which obviously turned out to not be the case. But let's be clear, I mean, obviously gas prices are going up globally, as are food prices, chemical prices, housing prices in parts of the world. And industry was willing to make a compromise and accommodation to make sure that prices did not reach international parity over the next couple of years. But the price cap for next year, that's basically now for a few days of consultation. And you've got to remember, this is a sweeping reform of the whole gas market. There's barely time to even read the legislation and think about it, but let alone create a submission, have a meaningful discussion before the vote later this week. But yes, you are right. In terms of the longer term proposal from 2024, that is open for consultation, but legislative reforms already, to help implement that, are already going to take place this Thursday. And if you look at some of the draft legislation, I direct you to 53B, clause 53D, for those who actually enjoy reading legislation like myself. You can't, you can't have written something which looks more Marxist. It literally says the government can, at any point, for any reason, at any point in time, take someone's gas, force it to be sold to anywhere they want, at any price, at any cost, with no recourse and no point of review. And when you do things like this, it is understandable that the industry itself balks, and now we're seeing the industry look to push back very strongly. They've already, I understand, committed tens of millions of dollars to a campaign to push back against this. We're going to see a halt of investment, and we're likely to see the industry become a lot less cooperative. Keeping in mind, industry has been very cooperative in making sure near misses didn't become energy blackouts over the last few years. The next time we have a near miss, industry may not be there to scramble the gas at the last minute. The regulator might not be up to it, and that's when a Bowen blackout can occur.
I asked Ed Husick about that threat for the industry to run a campaign against the changes and so on, and he said this is the same ExxonMobil, for example, that warned about not continuing with their investments in WA when Alan Carpenter introduced the domestic reservation there. He says that the industry's been full of threats before, but there's still a return, so they will make investments accordingly. So the government doesn't appear too concerned about this threat of an investment strike, Saul.
Well, absolutely. I think the gas industry has cried wolf too many times in the past, and the problem is now when they actually force an intervention which is going to have real repercussions, you do get this response from government where it says, we've heard this all before. That's why you have people such as myself, and we've always, when you look at, for example, the West Australia gas policy, we've not had concerns when that was introduced and some of the implications there, but we do have concerns here. When again, it's to reiterate, this is not so much about the price, right? And there can be a debate about what the price should be or how much it should be limited. This is about a much more sweeping reform of how the gas market works, which has been done without consultation, not just with industry, but even within government departments themselves. If I was sitting there within the regulators now, I'd be really concerned about my ability to actually deliver on what the government's asking.
Saul Kavonic, Research Director at Credit Suisse for oil and gas. Thanks so much. Appreciate your